Hey, what's up? Sorry this is a bit late. I had another video prepared about the sort of the new player experience, but I kind of scrapped it. I think I want to work on it a bit more before I, make something as definitive as that. I really want it to be like a big, proper video trying to get new players into the game. So for now, let's just talk about Willbender. I wanted to do like a series of videos talking about each of the specs, what I think about them, what kind of my favorite aspects are, and how I think they could be improved. And the Willbender is going to be the first one I talk about because it's the main one I played throughout the whole End of Dragons campaign, and Guardian is my main. So yeah, let's talk about it. So Willbender is the new elite spec for the Guardian class. Elite specs are basically subclasses or advanced classes, whatever you want to call it. And the Guardian got Willbender. The best way I can describe Willbender is that it's like a dual-wielding, crack-addled Firebender. The playstyle is kind of like a thief. It feels, just as fast, just as nimble and mobile. I think the first thing I want to talk about is the class fantasy. So they're going for this sort of martial artist / royal guard sort of thing. And I think generally Willbender is one of the stronger class fantasies that was brought with the elite specs this time around. Every single one of the utility skills is, some sort of martial arts move, whether it's a, flurry punch or a spinning crane kick, that sort of thing. It reminds me a lot of, playing WoW and playing my Windwalker monk. So yeah, generally I was pretty happy with this. I mean, I'm a big fan of martial arts. I'm a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, that sort of thing. So Willbender was basically my wet dream in terms of a class fantasy, and it was on my favorite class, so that was just a bonus. So Willbender can be played a few different ways. You can either build for condition damage through the burning, or power damage, or Alacrity, or a hybrid of those roles. Alacrity is just a boon that decreases skill cooldowns. It's very useful in instance content. You'll be able to reduce cooldowns for your entire team, but more on that later. So the main way I played Willbender was as a condition damage DPS, but I also dabbled with the Alacrity and that sort of thing. I was using a mix of grieving stats and vipers. Grieving because it was a bit of a hybrid between power damage and condition damage, which is great because all of your condition application comes through skills that do power damage. And then also having the additional condition damage and duration on vipers was very helpful. I'll post my build on screen with the traits and that sort of thing if you want to have a look. And the natural weapon pairing with this would be, offhand torch with either a main hand sword or main hand scepter. I actually really enjoyed using greatsword on this because the interesting thing about Willbender is that basically any weapon can become a condi weapon just due to how the virtues work. So if you're unfamiliar, basically Guardian has 3 buttons above their weapon skills there that are called virtues, and on the core class they're basically just basic buffs, and then on Firebrand they turn into different tomes, and then on Dragon Hunter they're sort of different sort of utility. But on Willbender, each of those skills becomes a movement skill and sort of puts you in a stance basically. So while under the effects of this stance, you have to dish out a number of hits before the effect actually procs. So for example, the F1 procs burning, F2 procs healing, and F3 procs Aegis and protection, I believe. And these can be modified through the traits. But basically, because the F1 procs burning on 5 hits, you can basically use whatever weapon combo you want, and it'll be able to proc that burning for you. I really enjoyed using Greatsword because of the extra movement on the 3, but also the 4 and the 2 are, big multi-hit attacks. So with the combination of that 2 and the 4, you'll be able to proc those virtues pretty easily just by comboing those 2 together. The important thing to keep in mind about Willbender is that you've just always got to be attacking, and it's really, really reliant on these multi-hit skills. And the good thing is that you get a lot of multi-hit skills as Willbender. So as you accumulate your hero points and you invest them into Willbender, you'll unlock a bunch of utility skills that you can slot into your utility bar. The one I chose to run with was, I think it's called Whirling Light or Whirling Wrath. I think I'm getting it confused with something. And I was running that for the most part because it also gives you extra burning on that, and because this is a condition build, I wanted the extra burning. There's another skill called Flash Combo, which is really handy. It lets you blink towards a target and then do a bunch of hits. It's particularly good for the power / Alacrity build, but I'll go into that in a second. But speaking of the skills, the heal skill, let's talk about that. The heal skill is, it's okay. I mean, it's a counter attack thing. You've got 2 charges of it. Basically, you can block the next incoming attack and it'll give you some bonus health. I want to say that Litany of Wrath is probably a bit more handy for Willbender, just because you're sticking to the enemy, you're doing so many hits, so you're going to do a lot of healing. But I really wanted to play around with the full Willbender kit while I was doing story, so you'll notice I have a lot of the Willbender skills equipped. The other Willbender skills you can choose from are the Heal Crack, which is like an instant stun on a 15-second cooldown, which is really cool. And the other one I can't remember the name of right now, but it's basically a stun break that flips over into a 3-second daze. Basically a daze and a stun break in one skill. I found that really handy in PvP. And then there's the elite skill Heaven's Palm, which is just an insane, ridiculous amount of Defiance bar damage, and using that in combination with Greatsword 5, that was plenty of break bar damage for the most part while I was doing the story and strikes and that sort of thing. So playing condi, I really love this. I've never played condi on Guardian before. I never built Firebrand to do condition damage, so I really wanted to go all out on condi, and I really enjoy the play style. You basically just hit your F1 and then use as many multi-hit skills as you can within that window to proc the burning as much as possible. And I find that really fun. It's a really fun, fast play style. And the cool thing is that if you're running Willbender and you're running Greatsword, you have 2 whirl finishes. You've got the whirl finisher on Whirling Light as well as the Greatsword 2. And so that's just extra burning. And yeah, I've really enjoyed that interaction because any build that has you interacting with combo fields, I really enjoy a lot. But the important trade-off to think about is the fact that yeah, you have to be hitting things all the time. So your F2 and F3, if you want to proc the healing or the stability, you're going to need to be hitting something. So it does require a bit of adjustment. It's definitely quite different from the Dragon Hunter heal virtue, where you basically just target a spot and you'll just be able to do a big group heal. This definitely doesn't have as much utility as Dragon Hunter or Firebrand. It's a very kind of selfish personal DPS, especially because the sort of Alacrity build is pretty hard to pull off. So yeah, let's talk about that now. The top 2 traits in the last 2 columns of the Willbender Elite Spec will make your F2 grant Alacrity instead of giving you the instant health. It'll also give you regen to compensate. And of course, I'll post my build on screen as well. Now, the first thing I'll say is that it's fun. It's a really fun way to apply Alacrity. It's definitely a lot more engaging than playing Alacrity Renegade or Mirage. You get to press more than 2 buttons to apply Alacrity. The loop is, you know, similar to the condition Willbender. Instead of using the F1 before your multi-hit skills, you'll be using the F2, and you'll just be using the F1 to give you a bit of a damage bump, and you'll also be using the F3 to give you a damage bump, actually, because with the right traits, Aegis will be giving you an increased strike damage bonus, so you want to keep that rolling as much as you can. Now, as fun as it is, you know, I really enjoy this playstyle, but it is very difficult to maintain 100% Alacrity uptime, especially in these End of Dragon strikes, because the bosses move around so much that even me running Flash Combo and Whirling Light, it was quite tricky. Sometimes you'll blink and you won't even be facing the right direction. Keep in mind, in this footage, I am wearing absolutely scuffed gear. I put on the gear from my Dragon Hunter and swapped my legendary gear over to Diviner's stats. I only had like 40% boon duration in this, but I've tried out using higher concentration gear on the DPS Golem, and it is very easy to upkeep that Alacrity, but you know, it's a DPS golem. It's not moving. So in a more realistic scenario where the boss is waltzing around the arena, it's usually quite hard to keep up and make sure all of your hits are connecting. This also really falls flat when the boss has an immunity phase, or you've got to, you know, here, like we were hitting this ad that basically has to be CC'd, but during this time she takes no damage, which means that it's really overshadowed by stuff like Mechanist and Renegade and whatnot, because they can just apply Alacrity whenever. If the boss walks out of the arena to go have a picnic, you can still apply Alacrity on these classes, but it is definitely difficult on Willbender. I think it's only really viable on bosses that don't have this sort of immunity phase. So as long as you can keep doing damage, you can keep applying Alacrity. And it's funny, in this whole conversation, I've literally not even talked about Offhand Sword, which, you know, comes with Willbender, because I did not use it at all. Obviously, I'm running condition damage, don't need the extra, you know, power damage on the sword. But it is good for PvP, which I will briefly talk about. I am not a good PvP player. I sit around gold 1, gold 2 if I, you know,
do the rankings for that season. It's definitely super fast, super nimble, really easy to kite other players, which I've really enjoyed. I've never had that sort of play style before. Like I said, I don't really play much Thief or anything like that, but I've really enjoyed being able to bait people around corners and constantly duck in and out of combat. Here I ran a couple meditations just for the extra survivability. The 5 on sword is just excellent chase potential. You can just chase anyone down with that extra shadow step. And then being able to pull off the 4 straight after because they're immobilized, that's just a great little combo. Really enjoyed that a lot. And something to note as well is the cleave damage is pretty insane because those virtues just lay down those Willbender flames everywhere. So if you've got a bunch of downed players, you just lay down your Willbender flames and then go ham with your greatsword, start spinning to win all over them, and you'll be able to down, you know, all of them in no time. I found running greatsword as well in my other slot has been super handy just for the extra mobility and for that extra cleave. But yeah, that's enough about PvP because you don't want to see more of my PvP footage. It's awful. You're gonna probably throw up in your mouth. Real quick, I want to call out sword as well. So whether or not you're dual wielding swords or using torch in the offhand, you're gonna be using sword 3 a lot, and it just does not work. It does not work with this spec at all. I've always not really liked this skill, but especially with this spec, it's just very antithetical to the Willbender's design of constantly moving around because this sword 3 roots you in place. So I'd love to see this altered for Willbender specifically, in much the same way that Virtuoso had one of their sword skills changed to better fit their spec's playstyle. So yeah, I'd really like to see that. The F1 still has this awkward little micro delay on it when you use it. I would really love to see this removed. I'm not sure why this is still here. They just added a fix to Mechanist so that their Mace 3 wouldn't lock you in for that brief second. So I'd like to see that on Willbender as well because it makes it a little bit awkward. But other than that, I really don't have a lot of complaints for Willbender. I was pretty happy. You got a lot of AoE cleave, a lot of CC, a lot of mobility. What can I say? It's a really fun spec. If you just drill into your mind that you need to get as many hits as possible within these virtue stance windows, then you're gonna have a good time. So yeah, what do you think about Willbender? And what class do you want me to cover next? I've been playing a lot with Bladesworn and Harbinger at the moment. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Willbender. And I hope you're enjoying End of Dragons. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.